You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
Welcome into another 3-Maw Pod. I am John Kurtz, joined this time by everybody. Feels a lot better this time, you know? I sat here last time, like, getting ready to fire everything up, and I was like, hey, it's a 3-Maw Pod, and, well, it's just me and Trayshawn Ward, I guess. But this time I've got DY and Cole Manbeck. Cole has decided to grace the pod with his presence after ditching us for Maui there for a while for a little 10-year anniversary trip with his wife. Seemed pretty frivolous compared to the business that we have here on the pod, but just let the record show. I've been the serious one here lately, everybody. Anyway, we're going to get you caught up on the basketball recruiting that is going on with the portal. Still hot and heavy. K-State still with 3 spots and being mentioned with a lot of players, but nothing substantial seemingly happening as of right now. Couple of football commitments and some Vegas over-under win totals for Big 12 football coming up this year. But as always, we need to thank our friends at Holiday Distillery. They bring you Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon, 360 Vodka, whichever you prefer. Make sure you go out and get stocked up and support those who support us. Holiday Distillery, great K-State folks. And we have heard nothing but great things about Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon for all of you bourbon drinkers. And, of course, 360 Vodka as well. Cole, did you have any 360 vodka while you were out in the beaches of Maui sending me Snapchats from luau's?
I can't lie to the people. I don't believe they had it in stock out there in Maui, so I did not. Instead, I drank very expensive $20+ mixed drinks down there. So not a lot of affordable options. But do I look more tan, guys, or do I still just look? Yeah, I look the same. Yeah, put too much SPF 30 on, I guess. So. My neighbors up the street saw me Saturday night and they were like, I thought you went to Hawaii. Like you look the same. So yeah, didn't get a lot of color, but it was a good time.
Well, at least you saw Uso, right?
I saw Uso, man. Talk about a small world. And I had made the comment to my wife, like, seen Uso multiple times before, and I saw the hair. So I saw the back of him at the airport and I knew he was from Hawaii, and I just had joked to my wife. I was like, Vanessa, that's Uso. She's like, who? And then he turns around and he's got a K-State football bag. He's got his cleats on. He's got his name tag and everything. And I ended up right behind him in the security line at the airport. Uso Samalo, for people that don't know, K-State starting nose tackle or projected starting nose tackle this year. And he couldn't have been nicer. He went back to surprise his mother for Mother's Day. And it was his birthday as well. So shout out to Uso, man. He's a super nice guy. And so it's why I always wear K-State stuff when I'm traveling, because you never know who you're going to run into. And he actually saw the K-State stuff and was like, let's take a picture. So
you said he had his cleats on. I doubt that.
No, he had his cleats strapped to his backpack. So respect, because Uso took the cleats to Hawaii, which I suspect then maybe Uso was putting in some work down in Maui. So something I was not doing.
I was trying to look here. You jogged my memory about a story, Cole. When I was in the airport here just recently, getting ready to go to Chicago, I wound up standing right next to a Kansas football player in the security line because I saw his bag behind him. I think it was maybe this O.J. Burrows, a safety. I'm trying to remember who it was, but I was wearing, as you say, my Big 12 champions t-shirts. Yeah. I felt pretty good about that.
The one thing I regretted about tweeting the picture is, I don't know how many people went after my Wildcat hand sign and making fun of my fingers. Yeah.
Cole, you're right. The whole Wildcat hand sign in general is bad. I don't like it, but I did a very poor rendition of it.
I mean, I was in a hurry. We were getting ready to go through security, and I do it terribly anyways. Like I don't.
It looked like a T-Rex arm.
Yeah, no,
it's the worst one I've ever seen.
Yeah, thank you. I just really enjoyed getting bullied the whole flight home. I checked my mentions and like people sending gifts and everything of like what I was like. I think I had like that. Like it was so bad if you're watching on YouTube right now, and I was embarrassed by it. Uso, I just took a couple normal pictures without it, and then Uso was like, wait, and he threw it up. So then I was like, oh, I got to throw it up. I hate the Wildcat hand sign. Did that start after we were out of college, John?
Yeah, we didn't really do it back in my day. We didn't.
Yeah, I don't know who started that. I wish we could get rid of it.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, can we get rid of the transfer portal, DY? It's frustrating me here lately. Transfer portal's frustrated me. Tell me something good. Give me some good transfer portal news.
I will say this. The good news is that I think that we're hearing enough chatter and seeing enough stuff that there will probably be a pretty solid selection of graduate transfers. And that's important because if you're not a graduate, they're not a graduate transfer, they're not going to be available for this upcoming season, right? Because the transfer portal window closed on May 11th. So they have 3 spots remaining. The season, still quite a ways away at this point. And the selection is a little sparse now because a lot of guys did make their choices in the last few weeks. So the guys that aren't graduate transfers, there's probably not a lot of them that still remain, at least that are worthy of playing for Kansas State, right? So I think the good news is that there's going to be a good enough selection of graduate transfers that they should be able to, swim above water, so to speak, between now and when they want the roster to be filled, which is probably what we're thinking into July, early August this time, which is a little bit sooner than what we saw last year, just because they're going to take that foreign trip this year.
Well, it just feels to me like they've been pretty damn picky, and I guess DY, I'll just leave it up to you to say as much as you want to or not here, but we had the Collins kid from Kentucky where even Trilly was on the fact that they had a visit coming up, and then it sounds like K-State decided to back off of that. A little bit of chatter about Caleb Love and not wanting to necessarily dive headfirst into those waters, which I super talented but pretty erratic, and you hear some things about him behind the scenes. So I understand, but at the same time, we're looking here okay, there's a lot of talented guys that you're kind of just letting walk here, and yes, the selection is dwindling more now. Now, we've seen with the football program how much culture really matters, and that letting some guys walk off of that team a couple of years ago in 2020 seemed to be a very good thing. So, look, I trust them. I trust them. Ultimately, as whiny as we can be sometimes, I definitely do trust these guys. Yeah. But just your thoughts on that whole take.
They have been picky, probably pickier than most programs when it comes to who they bring in and who they don't. I think it's probably double-sided here. I think one, that culture is very important to them, and they're not going to jeopardize it one bit for one player. That's just not who they are. I think secondly, I think the transfer portal, and this has been shared by many people, and I think we learn about it more and more as the time goes on, and it's accelerating in this way. The transfer portal is a lot more expensive than any other waters. You guys going to the portal, there's usually a reason why. Tyler Perry, not that he's not probably getting a pretty good NIL deal himself. I'm not saying he isn't, but those are the exceptions because you have those, initial connections, and you can kind of present a balance at the table for that'll be, something that both sides align with. A lot of cases in the transfer portal that won't happen. It's a little bit pricier. So I think it's double-sided. I think culture matters to them, and they're not going to risk it for one kid. And I think the transfer portal recruiting is tougher because you have to know how much and where you want to allocate what you might have from a resource standpoint. So I think the combination of that probably, and just in general, I think they are insistent and very stubborn in the fact that, and I like this about them, that they don't, and because these words came out of their mouths last year, and I think it's a good staple to have. They don't feel like they have to compromise their culture or who they are for talent.
Yeah. And again, I stand by him with that. And I think, look, I guess I could just go straight into this quote that came from, this was an On3 article, right, DY? And
not me.
Well, I know, not you. Like On3, big On3. Like Jamie Shaw was posting.
Oh, I'm not big. Okay.
Good guy. Can't win. All right. It's just one coach in the Big 12, but it's we don't necessarily know who it is, but it says you can't build anything sustainable without retention. The best programs have good retention, which means you've done a good job evaluating and developing players, and you built a culture where guys want to stay. You can't recruit 8 or 9 guys every year and expect to be cutting down nets. Returning 7 or 8 guys each year and only bringing in 3 or 4 new faces is where we want to be. And it's not just that it is difficult to do, I think, just from a chemistry and culture standpoint. It's also just incredibly difficult to do from a financial standpoint unless you are Arkansas with Walmart money to throw around every offseason. That's just a really, really difficult thing for anybody to try and manage. So I think that's got to be the idea, right? Like eventually give Tang some more time to bring in the high school recruits, which he's doing a great job of, beating out Kansas for 5-star David Castillo. You know, we've seen what's happening with the incoming guys, 3 top 150 guys coming in this year, led by Day and RJ. Like you get more program guys in that can sit around and develop, and then you'll have enough depth that it won't matter as much, and you can just add a piece or two in the offseason and probably call it good and be able to hopefully afford that too.
Yeah, you be less relying on the transfer portal. I think that's where ultimately they would like to be. I mean, obviously that's an anonymous coach and from the Big 12. And if we were to look at the structures and how programs operate, it sounds a whole lot like what we would hear from Kansas State and Baylor.
You sure it wasn't Huggins?
That would be the opposite. So West Virginia. You know what? I guess it could be Oklahoma State. They don't have a ton of turnover year after year, but yeah, heck, it could be Kansas, but they had a lot of turnover this year.
Yeah. I think Bob Huggins has a bigger fish to fry these days, Cole, unfortunately for him.
Yeah.
Let's get into some specific players here. A lot of people have been wondering about Ernest Udeh from Kansas. Seemed to be the assumption was he was just going to commit to Duke upon visiting there. That has not happened, and now there are whispers in the college basketball world that there may be some academic issues with what's happening at Duke, and so there would be, to again quote Trilly, the best ball. Go follow Trilly Donovan. I'm not even kidding. If you want all the transfer portal insight you can get on Twitter, I mean, he had said like, hey, it looks like there's a window of opportunity for K-State and others to jump back in here, but don't know how much communication has been reciprocated on that end now that there seems to have been a snag with Duke.
Yeah, I think that he's probably steering the Duke likelihood is definitely dwindling by the minute. I think that seems to be pretty consensus according to everyone that you speak with. What isn't a consensus is where he's going to go instead of Duke, because that's all over the place. There's still a little bit of people that'll tell you that Kansas State is involved. I've seen it around a little bit, but just from everything that I've been able to glean from the people I trust, I still think Kansas State is on the outside looking in on Ernest Udeh. And I don't know if it's generally academics really that are the problem with the Duke thing. I think it's more, it is academics, but not just like he's not taking care of his business. I think it's more of a transfer credit thing there because he's not a grad transfer. So, and then you have the requirements at Duke, kind of like Michigan, where the transfer credit thing gets a little wonky. So where's that going to likely have him end up? I don't know. There's a lot of speculation now about Alabama because their starting center, Bediako, is probably going to stay in the draft. So they're going to be looking for someone to fill that void, and Ernest Udeh would make a lot of sense.
And they got money.
Yeah, they do. Heck, at this point, I don't rule out a return to KU even. They have spots available, and if he doesn't like what's kind of out there, he can just go back there, enter the portal next year, right? So,
well, that was my thought when it sounded like it was just starting to get quiet, and he wasn't really talking to anybody else, even though the Duke thing hadn't worked out. I was like, well, that would seem to indicate Kansas, right? Like that was so I would not be shocked about that either. I would not. Cole, do you have any thoughts on good old Ernest? Good old Ernie.
Well, I mean, I would love Udeh. I would just, it must be frustrating for these coaches all around the country dealing with the portal, because you hear about all these scheduled visits and then it feels like 90% of them never actually happen or occur. I mean, you get the TCU and K-State visits if he makes it past Duke. Well, now it seems like he's not going to go to Duke, but TCU and K-State haven't really heard from Udeh. So are those visits even going to happen? K-State tried to set up other visits according to DY with other guys and just flaky about everything and ended up pulling the plug. And so it's very frustrating dealing with the portal. At one point it was exciting. Now I'm to the point where, to the topic you brought up earlier, John, on player retention and DY, I think that's probably the right approach. I mean, Jerome Tang has always said when they were at Baylor, they had a transfer rate of maybe like 15%, 20%. I can't remember the exact number, but it was definitely below national averages and Big 12 average. They were really good at retaining guys. and developing within their program. And I think that's probably the direction as they build this roster out with high school kids, is really just supplementing the overall roster with 1 or 2 transfers a year and not needing 3 or 4, because we've just seen, unless this dials down a little bit and people start to realize the return on the investment isn't worth it and giving what they're giving to these transfer portal guys, unless that dials down, I think the retaining players and building through the high school ranks could kind of be that new loophole where everybody seems to be forgetting about the high school ranks, like Bill Snyder with the junior college ranks, right? And what he found there back in the day. Now, maybe you're able to get some more guys in the high school ranks because everybody's so focused on having experienced veteran teams through getting guys in the portal.
I don't know when the correction is going to happen. Sometimes that takes time. Timing that out is tricky, but I will say it seems, and maybe there isn't a correction. Maybe it's more feasible than we imagine. Maybe the folks with money have more stomachs for this than we are guessing. But the fact that I'm hearing, role players in some cases making well into 6 figures lets me know that there's some dollar amounts going out on the regular for a lot of these kids in the transfer portal that are just really you would think untenable, but maybe I'll be proved wrong.
Yeah. There is a lot of stories that we've heard that you just raising the eyebrow, like, damn, man, yeah, how are you supposed to compete if that's legitimately what's going on out there? Okay, but guard wise, DY, Yuri Collins, Ray J. Dennis, a couple of names that have been associated with K-State, at least in some capacity. Where are things at? Yuri Collins from St. Louis, Ray J. Dennis from Toledo.
Yeah, Ray J. Dennis, the MAC Player of the Year. I think a lot of people like him. He visited Michigan. He visited Illinois. Kansas wanted him to visit. Kansas State wanted him to visit. I think he's done taking visits, and I think he's going to pick Utah. So that one's pretty bizarre. Not sure why or how that one is unfolding the way it is, but that's kind of where it seems right now. Yuri Collins, that one all comes down, like, we don't know, obviously, because he's not in the transfer portal. But if he were to enter the transfer portal, you would anticipate Kansas State becoming involved there. A kid from St. Louis even as well. And Kansas State has a need for a point guard. His assist numbers very similar to Marquise Noel. So Yuri Collins would be, you would think, a likely target if he enters the portal. At one point, it was considered a slam dunk that he would enter the transfer portal. He's a graduate transfer that is involved with the NBA draft, but there's a lot of chatter, buzz, whatever you want to call it right now, that he could just remain in the NBA draft pool. So have to wait and see on that. It's about a week. We'll know that within the next week. May 31st is the deadline to return to college if you want.
You want to know the last time that Utah basketball went to the NCAA tournament?
Was Rick Majerus the coach still?
No, but it was still this.
Was he the coach there? Am I right? Rick Majerus.
Yeah, well,
yeah, back in the Keith Van Horn days.
It was 2003. 2003 was the last time Rick Majerus was the head coach there. No, it was 2016. So it's been damn near a decade since they have actually been to the NCAA tournament. But I digress. You know what? Let's get a break in. We'll take a break. We've got to talk about Keontae. The latest with Key, we still have not heard one way or the other whether or not he is staying in the NBA draft. So we'll discuss that coming up next.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.
So last we heard, and I believe we talked about this last week, Derek and I on the pod, that Keontae had talked to Andy Katz briefly at the combine and said basically like, hey, look, I mean, the plan is to stay here in the draft as long as things go well medically and getting medically cleared. I mean, it seemed like that is really the thing that is the issue, unfortunately, for Keontae here. Got cleared to play at K-State, but the standards seem to be a bit different, more stringent, the NBA level, where they know they're going to have to invest in you and give you a bunch of money. So we still don't have any like official word on that as the end of the month approaches here for Keontae and whether or not he's going to stay in the draft or not. So tough situation because, I mean, look, like we'd love to see him back at K-State, but, for the guy's future, if he's not going to be medically cleared this year by the NBA, that's a really tough blow for him. So where do things sit right now with Keontae Watch?
I think it's kind of the status quo from the last time that we spoke. The only real substance that I've kind of heard come out of it is that he did meet with the NBA doctors, medical team, whatever. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before. So I think he should probably be receiving or hopes to receive some finality and some kind of decision of where he kind of stands, because I guess we'll talk about it this way. Assuming that he would be medically cleared, there's more and more mock drafts that have him in it now. So that is a good thing for him, I would say. I'm seeing him, there was only one or two here and there that would have him like anywhere from 35 to 45. Now I see several that have him anywhere from 38 to 55 at this point. So obviously he has to get clear, but it seems more and more momentum for him to be picked if he's in the draft.
And see, that surprises me because he seems like a guy that I thought was going to need to be able to work out and show his versatility and athleticism at the combine, and him not being able to do that, I thought would actually hurt him. And I think it's ultimately just unfortunate that there's not a way to speed this process up for him. I mean, May 31st is the deadline for him to return to college and pull out of the NBA draft. And here we sit on May 24th when we're recording this, and he doesn't know yet if he's medically cleared. Like, why can't the NBA speed up the medical process and do this earlier? I just don't understand that, why they're delaying this and make it take so long. I think that's frustrating and puts him in a bad spot.
Yeah, I would think he would have, they knew this for a while, right? This wasn't something that just crept up on him in the last month. I know he had to declare officially probably, but I mean, it would have been nice for him to know one way or the other and be allowed to compete at the combine if he was cleared.
Right. Yeah, he should have been cleared before the combine. Like, I know they do medical stuff there at the combine, and I think they're putting in a new rule actually starting next year where if you don't show up to the combine and you're invited, you can't get drafted because of the medical process. I can't remember the exact rule. It just came out a couple of weeks ago. So that's going to go into place in 2024. But yeah, he should have been able to participate in the combine. You get a combine invite and then he can't do anything because they haven't medically cleared him. That just came as a surprise to me last week when that was reported, and what Keontae said, Andy Katz, that he's waiting to be medically cleared.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, get it figured out for the kid's sake, like if nothing else. And I would think like for, NBA teams, like you can then move on to the next guy on the list or make sure that you should seriously consider him. I'm definitely out over my skis. I don't understand how all of it works. I'm no NBA expert at all here. So anything else that I'm missing on the basketball front before we get to a couple football commits that have come in here recently?
I would say probably not a surprise, but I think we still say the overwhelming momentum is for Naquan Tomlin to definitely return.
Yeah. Have not, again, seen anything of it, but he never officially announced anything that he was going to be exploring the draft process. We found out about that through Tang. So that seems to just be the way that he's choosing to handle all this. Football-wise.
Yeah.
Patching up the roster with a couple of, this has been kind of the MO of this staff here lately. We've seen them, especially with defensive backs, have a lot of success going and pulling guys late, sometimes from obscure locations, more obscure schools, plug them into the secondary and just go. I trust this staff's real evaluation of that, and they've been able to do so now and bolster the secondary with transfer from SEMO, Southeast Missouri, and then a junior college defensive back as well, who both committed over this past weekend. So, DY, again, we're relying heavily on you, but get us up to speed on what K-State's bringing in here.
Yeah, between Julius Brents, Russ Yeast, Josh
Boss,
Drake Cheatham, Reggie Stubblefield, Kobe Savage. You might as well call Kent State DB transfer U at this point, right? So one would assume that they probably have two more home runs here with Tyler Nalone, the transfer from Southeast Missouri State, who is very big. Probably a little bit more athlete than actual player right now, but there's I would say high upside with him. And a lot of people that think he can be a really good player that can end up in the NFL. So I think that's where they're kind of hitting there. Probably play a little bit more corner than anything. And then with the safety, Daniel Cobbs, going back to Tyler Junior College with that one. That is the fourth defensive player that they've landed from Tyler Junior College in the last 2 years. He's from the same JUCO program as Gavin Forche, who's now on the transfer portal, but also Justice Clemens, who's in the secondary, and obviously Kobe Savage. So it's two guys that were maybe off the radar, of course, except Tyler Delhomme had a pretty good offer list there with Washington, West Virginia, and a few other Power Fives off the radar. But, I mean, is anyone really comfortable enough questioning them with a defensive back take that's a transfer? I certainly am not.
No, not at all. Did you mention Josh Hayes in that whole group we had there at the beginning too?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because you've got Josh Hayes drafted, Russ Yeast drafted, Julius Brents drafted. Like, they've been sending these transfer defensive backs into the NFL as well. So I imagine that's a huge selling point when they go up against schools like you mentioned, like the Washingtons of the world, to try and nab some of these guys. Is there still much chatter on trying to find a late receiver transfer to add to this roster?
Yeah, I think they have one spot available that with a little bit of wiggle room there to fill if they want. I don't think that they're going to fill it with somebody that they don't want to completely invest in. I don't think they're going to take someone just to take someone. Maybe that's self-explanatory, but I felt compelled to at least bring that up. Otherwise, they can kind of stay internal and figure out an answer that way. But if they spot a receiver that they really, really like, I think they would take it.
Do we take that to be bad news about the current receiver room and how that went during spring ball?
I don't know, right? I mean, that's a bad answer. I get that. But I think some of those guys were banged up, so I don't think they were really able to discern anything. Like RJ Garcia, a little banged up, James Jackson, a little banged up. I think maybe you have a little bit of kind of a history there with those two that maybe you question the durability a little bit and you just want a little bit more depth because those two it's not the first time that we've heard that about Garcia or Jackson. And so maybe depth purposes is what they need. I mean, they're going to get some reinforcements here. Well, I guess 3 of the 4 have been on campus, but the freshmen get there in June, which that'll be Trey Spivey. I think some people, I don't know if it's wrongfully assuming, but I think some people are probably going a little bit, at least from what I see on the message board. So I'm kind of gauging the fan base in that way. I think that just because they landed some higher ranked receivers than typical, that these guys are going to come in and play right away. Maybe they will. Maybe one will. I don't know. I just think it's bold to assume that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Cole. I will just say I would not assume that to happen.
Yeah, I think it's smart to add another body there. I mean, you've got 4 freshmen coming in at the receiver position, and you mentioned Jaden Jackson and Garcia injury history, DY, and Keegan Johnson missed last season with an injury as well at Iowa. And so you just like to have, a little more depth there that in case somebody does go down in the unfortunate event, you have another body. So hopefully they can land a guy that could be impactful and help them out there. But at least also they have Ben Sennett at the tight end position, which helps the passing game and alleviates a little bit of the concerns heading into this season at the wide receiver position, because you have one of the top tight ends in the country, one of the best tight ends, if not the best in the Big 12 coming back. So I think that alleviates a little concern, but you certainly hope that those guys can stay healthy. And DY, you had the scoop as well. And I don't know if you talked about it on last Wednesday's pod. I listened, but I can't remember the Colorado receiver that they had lined up potentially to transfer in, or at least on a visit, which would have been a big get.
Yeah, the one that started the spring game up, Tana Lamonius Craig, that recently picked Arizona over Auburn and Cal. Kansas State had made a lot of movement there, and he was going to visit Manhattan, but he kind of shut it down, wanted to stay closer to out west, where he was raised. So proximity kind of came into play there because of a personal situation. If not for that, K-State might have been able to crack that door open and surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, good news for the future, but I would feel better for the record. I mean, I would feel better if they add another body to that.
And remember, maybe that the late decision to add another could have something to do with the transition there. unfortunately, they had to transition from at receiver coach again for the 5th time, I think, in the last 6 years when Thad Ward left for Illinois. It just wasn't great timing because it was right before spring ball, of course, as well. So you hire Matthew Middleton. Not only is he trying to get his feet wet and on the ground when it comes to recruiting, he's got to learn an entire new offense, right? Because he has to be able to coach it during spring football. So it wasn't great timing. So maybe it says something about the receiver room. My guess is it says more about Middleton knows what he's working with now.
Yeah, fair enough. No, fair enough. It's a
personal preference. Yeah.
We'll see. Thad Ward did a pretty good job last year with K-State's receiving unit. All right, just a little news and notes pod for you here today. Hope you enjoyed that. Make sure and go listen to the Treshawn Ward pod from earlier this week if you have not got that. Chat that I had with K-State's new running back from Florida State, who, by the way, probably will be a factor in the passing game too, as we talk about the weapons K-State will have available on offense this year. Appreciate Holiday Distillery as always. Make sure and get your 360 vodka, your Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon. Support those who support us. For Cole Manbeck and Derek Young, I'm John Kurtz. Thanks for listening to another 3 Hawk.
Thanks for watching this production of KC Sports Network, the fastest growing sports media network in Kansas City. Check out these videos that feature our team of more than 15 former players, insiders, and analysts bringing you the best Chiefs coverage you can find. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.